world filled with motion, where the pace of life grows faster with every passing year, many have forgotten the sacred rhythm of stillness. Yet the paradox of life is this: when everything is loud, it is the quiet that holds the power. As 2025 approaches, this paradox becomes the prophecy. The time is coming when the voice of stillness will be louder than the noise of the world. This may not be understood by those who only know how to listen with their ears, but those who have cultivated the capacity to listen with the heart will understand the meaning. They will not wait for dramatic signs or breaking news. They will hear the change in the silence between their breaths. They will sense it in the stillness of early morning. They will witness it in the quiet understanding that arises when the mind is at rest. The world teaches us to seek noise, to equate movement with progress, to believe that more is always better. But spiritual wisdom reveals a deeper truth. The most transformative power comes not through addition but through subtraction, not through constant reaction but through calm observation. When we eliminate the distractions, the truth appears, not because it suddenly comes into being, but because it was always there, hidden beneath the surface of our overstimulation. The stillness being referred to is not laziness, nor is it ignorance. It is not the stillness of passivity or weakness, it is the stillness of clarity, like the stillness of a lake, so calm that it becomes a perfect mirror. When that stillness is disturbed, we no longer see the reflection clearly. But when the surface is settled, everything becomes visible. In 2025, the world will be given a choice: to continue in the direction of noise or to return to the path of clarity. One path leads to exhaustion, distraction, and confusion. The other leads to vision, awareness, and power. Stillness must be cultivated. It is not something that arises randomly. It is not gifted freely. It must be trained into the body and mind with discipline. It begins with intention, waking up early, before the mind is flooded with demands, and sitting in silence, observing the breath, observing the movement of thought, not trying to control it, but watching it with the patience of a mountain. This daily practice is a gate into awareness, a gate into truth. And in that space, one begins to hear what cannot be spoken. One begins to feel what cannot be taught through words. There is a language spoken by silence. It is the language of the divine. And it is in this language that the message of 2025 is being written, while the rest of the world becomes caught in conflict, arguments, politics, crises of ego. The awakened few will remain rooted in stillness. They will not run, they will not react. They will observe. And in that observation, they will recognize the pattern unfolding beneath the chaos. They will see that every disturbance is an invitation. Every collapse is a clearing. Every loud voice is an echo of inner emptiness. But the still voice, the one that whispers from the depth of the soul, is the only voice worth following. There will be moments in the year ahead when fear will rise like smoke from a fire, when people will look at the world and say, it is falling apart. But those who dwell in stillness will say, it is falling into place. This is not optimism, it is perception. When the mind is still, it sees clearly. And when it sees clearly, it understands the necessity of the storm. The storm clears what must be cleared. It shakes what must be shaken, it reveals what must be revealed. But only those who have made peace with silence will see the purpose of the chaos. This is why the greatest preparation for 2025 is not in accumulating resources, not in gathering alliances, not in fortifying external walls. The greatest preparation is the cultivation of inner silence. For in that silence one becomes immovable, one becomes unshakable, one becomes untouchable, not because they are strong in the way the world understands strength, but because they are anchored in something deeper. In silence we find the root, and the root holds even when the storm comes. To hear the voice of stillness requires the death of the ego's addiction to noise. The ego craves attention, affirmation, distraction, but the soul craves stillness. The soul wants to return to the source, and the source is found not in shouting, not in striving, but in being, in sitting, in breathing, in watching, in being fully present. When the mind becomes quiet enough, the soul begins to speak, and its voice is the very voice of the divine. This is not a concept, it is a lived experience. It cannot be read in books alone or understood through theories. It must be practiced day after day, moment after moment, in the midst of life, in the ordinary tasks, walking, washing, working. One must carry the awareness like a flame. That flame is stillness. It is the inner fire that does not consume, but illuminates, and it will be the guiding light through the darkness of confusion that may cover the world in 2025. Stillness is the eye of the hurricane. It is the center from which all movement can be observed without being lost in it. Those who live from this center will not need to escape the storm, for they have already found shelter within. They will not fear what is coming, because they have already faced themselves. They will not be shaken by the shaking of the world, for their foundation is not built on external things, but on the eternal silence that lies beyond form. Let those who are willing begin today, not tomorrow, not when it is convenient. Begin with the breath, begin with the moment. Sit, close your eyes and listen, not to the thoughts, but to the space behind them. That space is where truth lives. That space is the opening through which the divine enters. And through that space, the message of 2025 is already arriving. Quiet, clear, unshakable, like the mountain, like the stars, like the soul that remembers what the mind forgets. Do not wait for the noise to stop. It never will. Instead, train yourself to hear the silence through the noise. Then, no matter what happens, you will know what to do. You will know how to move, when to act, when to rest. And in knowing these things, you will become a messenger of peace in a time of confusion, a pillar of clarity in a time of distortion, and a living prophecy, not by speaking of the future, but by embodying the stillness that reveals it. Power as the world understands it has always been loud, visible, and often aggressive. It builds towers, draws borders, commands armies, and issues declarations. It is concerned with being seen, being obeyed, being in control. But as we approach the turning of the year into 2025, a profound shift begins to unfold. One that many will miss because it is not loud, not announced, and not dressed in the garments of power we are accustomed to. It is the shift from outer power to inner authority, and it is the kind of change that does not shake cities but reshapes lives from the inside out. Outer power is fragile because it is borrowed. It depends on external conditions, wealth, status, influence, titles, validation. The moment the environment changes, outer power begins to collapse. But inner authority is rooted. It grows from discipline, from clarity, from lived truth. It cannot be given by anyone else, and it cannot be taken away. This shift in 2025 will be a quiet revolution of human consciousness, one that favors depth over display, essence over appearance, presence over performance. In times past, humanity believed that those with the most influence would shape the future. But as we watch systems built on ego begin to crumble, we begin to understand those with the deepest awareness will carry the future, not by force, but by presence. Inner authority does not need to announce itself. It speaks through calm decisions, through measured steps, through unwavering character. It shows itself in how one carries themselves in moments of stress, in how one responds to injustice, in how one remains grounded when others lose control. In 2025, the world will test the foundation of many leaders. It will challenge institutions, nations, and ideologies. The ones who rise will not be those who shout the loudest, but those who have spent years cultivating silence, clarity, and discipline within themselves. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is spiritual law. What is built outside must match what is cultivated inside. If the inner world is chaotic, shallow, and dishonest, the outer structure will eventually reflect that. If the inner world is ordered, focused, and aligned with truth, that energy will ripple outward and shape events without effort. To cultivate inner authority is to commit to a path of consistent self-honesty. It requires that we stop blaming others for our reactions, that we stop outsourcing responsibility for our choices, and that we begin to observe ourselves with the same scrutiny we apply to the world. Inner authority is not about perfection. It is about alignment. A person who is aligned within, whose thoughts, words, and actions come from the same source, radiates a kind of power that no title can bestow. This is the kind of power the coming year will demand. The illusions of power will fall. The costumes will be removed. The masks will slip. And what will be revealed is the soul beneath the surface. People will begin to see who truly walks in alignment with purpose and who has been hiding behind the curtain of performance. The shift from outer power to inner authority is not just a spiritual concept, it has real-world implications. In the realms of politics, education, business, even within families and communities, those who have built trust through integrity will be called upon. Not because they sought power, but because people will instinctively recognize their steadiness. In times of uncertainty, the human soul looks for anchors. Those anchors are not found in positions of control, but in those who have walked the path of self-mastery. They have trained their minds to be still under pressure. They have trained their emotions to remain steady in storms. They have trained their speech to carry wisdom rather than reaction. This training is not glamorous. It is daily. It is repetitive. Each is humble. And yet it is this very training that will qualify people to lead. Not with force, but with presence. There is a cost to this transformation. Those who seek inner authority must walk away from the comforts of victimhood and blame. They must give up the need to be constantly approved, constantly celebrated, constantly reassured. They must learn to walk alone, not in isolation, but in integrity. They must become deeply intimate with silence, for it is in silence that the real work begins. The mind will resist, the ego will scream, but through consistent practice, a deeper self emerges, one that does not need external validation to know its value. This self is the foundation of inner authority. It moves slowly, deliberately, with attention to detail. It does not need to convince anyone, it simply is. And in a world addicted to noise, this quiet integrity will shine like a lighthouse in fog. 2025 will be a mirror, It will reflect back to individuals and nations what they have built their lives upon. Those who have relied on manipulation, fear, and spectacle will find their influence fading, not because of some dramatic punishment, but because the collective consciousness of people is changing. There is a growing hunger for authenticity, for truth, for humility. These values cannot be manufactured. They must be lived, and only those who have lived them will be able to meet the moment with grace. This grace is not passive. It is a strong, clear energy that knows when to act and when to wait. It knows how to set boundaries without violence. It knows how to serve without losing the self. This grace is the fruit of inner authority. The journey into inner authority does not require dramatic life changes. It begins where you are with what you have. It begins in how you treat others when no one is watching. It begins in how you speak to yourself in moments of failure. It begins in the quiet decisions that define your character. Over time, these small acts accumulate. They shape your energy. They determine how others experience your presence. You do not need to announce your transformation. People will feel it. The room will feel it. Even the environment around you will begin to align with the clarity you carry. This is not an ideal. It is a path. And like all paths, it requires commitment. The world will always tempt you to return to noise, to react, to prove yourself. But the invitation of 2025 is different. It is the invitation to go inward, to find the authority that cannot be stolen, to live from the root rather than the branch. Those who walk this path will not only survive the changes ahead, they will become instruments of renewal. They will not seek to control the world, they will seek to align with the deeper order that sustains it. And from that alignment, their actions will carry power. Not the power of domination, but the power of truth. In the days ahead, remember this. Outer power rises and falls like the tide. But inner authority, once awakened, becomes a wellspring that never runs dry. It is not given, it is earned. And it is this that the world will come to recognize. Not because it is declared, but because it is undeniable. Those who possess it will lead, not because they sought followers, but because they became examples. And in becoming examples, they became the new foundation for a better world. Nature does not speak in the way humans do, yet it has always been a messenger. In its silence, there is profound wisdom. In its patterns, there are lessons more ancient than any written book. In the rising of the sun, in the flow of rivers, in the blooming and withering of flowers, there is an order, a rhythm, a code. That code has not changed. What has changed is our willingness to listen to it. As the world prepares to enter 2025, the voice of nature will rise, not with words, but with signs. Before humanity speaks of warnings, before governments raise alerts, before scientists release their data, nature will already have spoken. It is often forgotten that nature is not something separate from us. It is not an external object to be analyzed and used. We are part of it. Our minds, our emotions, even our breath follow its laws. And when balance within nature is disturbed, it does not retaliate, it responds. Not to punish, but to correct. To remind us of what we have forgotten. There will be signs, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Shifts in weather patterns that seem unexplainable. Seasons that no longer behave as they once did. Waters that rise where they used to retreat. Skies that change their tone. Fires that cleanse the forests with a different intensity. Animals migrating strangely, birds falling silent in areas where their songs once filled the air. These are not random, they are not just natural disasters. They are messages. Messages written not in ink, but in movement. Messages meant not to scare, but to awaken. In the sacred traditions of old, people looked to nature for direction. The wind was a guide, the moon a teacher, the mountains a reflection of inner stillness, the ocean a symbol of emotional depth. But in modern times, humanity has traded this wisdom for convenience. We've paved over the sacred. We've silenced the natural world with machines. We've treated the earth not as a living being, but as a possession. And now, as we approach a time of revelation, the earth will remind us of her voice. The natural world is not reactive in the way humans are. It is patient. It gives warnings gently. The crack in the soil appears long before the ground gives way. The dryness of air is felt before the fire ignites. The silence in the forest is heard before the storm comes. But if the warnings are ignored, nature acts with greater force, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Because balance must return. This is not myth, this is not fantasy, it is observable, repeatable, and as humanity continues to create imbalance through greed, through ignorance, through a disconnection from the sacred, nature will bring balance back. Not with permission, but with certainty. There will be those who call it climate, there will be those who call it fate. But those who have trained themselves to see beyond the surface will know it for what it is. The earth's voice, a prophetic call to remembrance, a divine echo through the soil and sky, asking humanity to wake up before it's too late. The teachings of nature are not harsh, they are clear. They tell us to slow down, to observe, to listen, to respect. The tree does not hurry, yet it grows. The river does not force, yet it shapes mountains. The bird does not hoard, yet it is always provided for. These are the teachings we have turned away from. And these are the teachings we must return to if we are to move through the coming year with grace and understanding. 2025 will not be remembered only for political shifts or economic changes. It will be remembered for the signs in the earth. And those signs will be the opportunity for humanity to return to alignment, not through fear, but through humility, through the willingness to admit we have gone too far from our source. The more disconnected we become from nature, the more disconnected we become from ourselves. We build machines to control our surroundings, but cannot control our own thoughts. We pursue artificial intelligence while neglecting emotional intelligence. We explore other planets while forgetting how to care for our own. This is not progress. This is imbalance. To prepare for what is coming is not only to prepare physically, but to prepare spiritually. It is to walk again in nature, not just as a tourist, but as a student. It is to touch the earth with reverence, to listen to the wind as a messenger, to see the fire as a purifier, not just a destroyer, to understand that when rain falls heavily, it is washing not just the streets, but the unconscious patterns of our collective mind. Everything is connected. The storm outside reflects the storm within. The drought on the land mirrors the spiritual dryness of humanity. The melting ice is not just a phenomenon, it is a symbol of the inner rigidity that must soften. Nature has always offered us the truth, without manipulation, without ego, without noise. It simply reflects back to us what we give. If we pollute, it becomes toxic. If we nurture, it becomes abundant. The earth does not choose sides. It responds to action. In 2025, this response will become more visible. And it will be those who are attuned to the earth, those who have learned to walk slowly, breathe deeply, act consciously, who will understand how to respond. While others panic, they will prepare. While others despair, they will restore. Not because they are better, but because they have listened. This is why spiritual discipline is necessary, not just for inner peace, but for external clarity. When you are calm, you can read the signs. When you are aware, you can sense what others miss. When you are rooted, you can adapt without fear. The earth favors the adaptable. The storm does not destroy the tree that bends. The flood does not carry away the stone that is grounded. In the same way, those who have made themselves flexible and focused through practice, meditation, movement, mindfulness, will endure and guide others. Nature is not separate from the divine. It is the handwriting of the divine. Every sunrise is a reminder. Every leaf is a scripture. Every wave is a breath. When you align with nature, you align with the deeper intelligence of life. That intelligence is always moving toward balance, healing, and truth. It does not need belief to function. It does not seek praise. It simply is. And as we face the transitions of 2025, our survival and our evolution will depend on how well we can recognize and return to that intelligence. This return is not an event, it is a way of life. It is planting with awareness, walking without haste, eating without waste, speaking without harm, living without ego. These are not small acts, they are sacred rituals. And they are the way we say to the earth, I remember, I see, I understand. In this remembrance, we become stewards again, not masters. Listeners again, not controllers. Students again, not tyrants. And in doing so, we become aligned with the future, not the one dictated by fear, but the one written in the silent wisdom of the earth. The coming time will not be measured by how much a person knows, how loudly they speak, or how many followers they have. The line that will divide those who fall into confusion from those who rise in clarity will be drawn by one quiet but decisive factor: discipline. Not discipline in the external sense of rules and routines alone, but inner discipline, the ability to hold the mind still, to remain grounded in storms, to choose presence when panic tempts action. In 2025, the atmosphere of the world will be charged with uncertainty. Events will unfold that confuse even the most informed minds. Systems will change, structures will bend. The familiar will become unfamiliar. And in this chaos, the ability to remain calm, aware, and rooted will no longer be an advantage. It will be a necessity. Only disciplined minds will see the path through the chaos, not because they are gifted with visions or special insights, but because they have trained themselves to see what others overlook. The undisciplined mind is like a leaf in the wind. Every emotion that arises takes it in a new direction. Every voice it hears pulls it off course. Every fear becomes a new destination. But the disciplined mind is like the mountain. The wind may blow, The clouds may gather, the rain may fall, but it remains unmoved. This stillness is not stubbornness, it is strength built from awareness. The ability to observe thoughts instead of being ruled by them. The ability to respond instead of react. The ability to wait for the right moment instead of being controlled by urgency. In 2025, these abilities will be more valuable than any possession, more necessary than any protection, more effective than any external weapon. Discipline is not something given, it is created. It begins with small decisions repeated every day, rising before the mind has a chance to scatter, sitting in silence when the body urges movement, breathing when the thoughts begin to race, choosing actions that are aligned with purpose, even when distraction offers pleasure. This kind of training sharpens the mind the way a blade is honed on a stone. It makes one precise. It allows clarity to emerge not as a feeling, but as a state of being. When a person walks through life with this clarity, their steps become intentional. They stop wasting energy. They stop chasing illusion. They begin to recognize truth, not through words, but through resonance. And that resonance becomes their guide through the fog that will settle over the chaotic mind is filled with noise. It jumps from conclusion to conclusion. It seeks answers without first understanding the questions. It clings to opinions without examining the foundation beneath them. This mind becomes easily manipulated, quickly exhausted, and constantly afraid. But the disciplined mind creates space. It listens deeply. It understands that not every thought is worth following. Not every voice is worth responding to. Not every urgency is worth feeding. This spaciousness becomes a form of power. It allows the individual to choose where to place their energy. And in a time when the energy of the collective is scattered and frantic, focused energy becomes the rarest and most precious resource. Many will ask in 2025, what should we do? But the deeper question is, who can we become? Because action without awareness is chaos. Strategy without presence is noise. Strategy without presence is noise. In the coming time, there will be false messengers, voices that claim to hold the truth but speak from their own fear. There will be movements that seem urgent but are built on emotion, not wisdom. There will be distractions dressed as solutions, and only the disciplined will be able to discern the real from the fake, not because they are smarter, but because they have trained themselves to be quiet enough to hear the difference. That difference is subtle. It does not shout, it hums quietly beneath the surface of words, felt more than heard, known more than explained. Inward discipline builds outward discernment. A person who cannot sit in silence for 10 minutes will not be able to make wise choices in moments of crisis. A person who has not trained their breath will be ruled by it when fear arrives. A person who has never watched their thoughts will be a slave to them when uncertainty strikes. This is why the true preparation for the year ahead is not stored in bunkers, but in the heart. It is not measured in what you possess, but in what you have practiced. It is not determined by who you know, but by how well you know yourself. Because when the mind is calm, it becomes a light in the darkness. Not just for yourself, but for those around you. Discipline is not cold or rigid. It is alive. It is the structure through which creativity flows. It is the boundary that protects the sacred. It is the rhythm that allows intuition to dance. Without discipline, intuition becomes scattered and emotion becomes overwhelming. But when discipline and intuition walk together, they form the path of wisdom. And that path is the only way through the terrain that lies ahead. There is no shortcut to this path. It is not bought, it is not inherited. It is walked one mindful step at a time. One breath, one choice, one moment of awareness, followed by another. In 2025, many things will compete for your attention. News, events, opinions, movements. The noise will rise like a storm. And in that storm, your greatest danger will not be what happens out there, but what happens in here. Inside the mind, if the mind is reactive, you will be swept away. If the mind is undisciplined, you will become confused. But if the mind is trained, every event becomes a lesson. Every challenge becomes a sharpening stone. Every confusion becomes an opportunity for clarity. This is not fantasy, it is the fruit of practice. It is the reward for showing up to your own life with intention, day after day. The world does not need more noise. It does not need more reaction. It needs those who are quiet enough to listen, steady enough to wait, strong enough to act with purpose. These people do not appear overnight. They are forged in silence, in simplicity, in solitude. They rise not through drama but through devotion. They live not to be followed but to be aligned. And in a world of endless distraction, their clarity becomes a light, a way forward. A reminder that chaos is not the end, it is the beginning of a deeper order. When the dust settles and the noise fades, what remains is the one who did not abandon themselves, the one who stayed grounded, the one who breathed through the panic, the one who held truth not as a concept but as a way of being. That person becomes the compass in a world that has lost its direction. And that compass is needed now more than ever. So begin, train the mind, calm the breath, align the actions, practice awareness, and in doing so, become the kind of person who does not wait for the storm to end, but walks through it with grace. Not because they are untouched by fear, but because they are led by discipline. And that discipline, quiet and invisible though it may be, is the path to clarity in 2025. It is the vision that sees through illusion. It is the stillness that holds steady while the world shakes. It is the true preparation, the lasting strength, and the light that will guide the way forward.